Good afternoon and welcome to today's press briefing with our newly elected government. I'm Donna Bush. Thank you as always for being here with us. We'd like to welcome our panelists, Your Excellency Governor Martin Roper, Premier and Minister for Sustainability and Climate Resiliency, the Honourable Wayne Panton, Minister for Health, the Honourable Sabrina Turner, Minister for Tourism and Transport, the Honourable Kenneth Bryan, and Deputy Premier and Minister for Finance, Economic Development and Labour, the Honourable Chris Saunders. Dr. John Lee, the Chief Medical Officer, is also here in the studio with us, as well as members of the media, our sign language interpreter, and of course, invited guests. Before we begin, we'd like to go to Bishop Dalbert A. Clark for today's prayer.
Jesus Christ, I am your friend, Pastor Clark. It's my pleasure. We are privileged at this time to be able to open the portals of heaven. Let me take the time out to salute the Honorable Governor, His Excellency, Mr. Ropers, Honorable Premier, Mr. Panton, and of course the Speaker of the House, the Honorable Mrna Bush, the members in general of the House of Parliament of the Cayman Islands, all leaders in the governmental regime, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, salutation. I'm called at this time, I'm asked at this time to lead us into a short prayer for the Cayman Islands. I'd love for you at this time to agree with me as I pray this prayer. Our world is in trouble. Government around the world is in trouble. Things has changed rapidly. But we know a God who understands and is in charge. Pray with me. Father, I give you glory. I give you honor. I give you praise. I thank you for love. I thank you for grace. I thank you for your mercy. Had it not been for love and grace and mercy and favor, no human being would be alive today. But we give you thanks. God, you are our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. Therefore will not we fear, though the earth be removed, and though the mountains be carried into the midst of the sea, though the waters thereof roar and be troubled, though the mountains shake with the swellings thereof. There is a river, the streams, whereof shall make glad the city of God, the holy place of the tabernacle of the Most High. God is in the midst of her. She shall not be moved. God shall help her, and that right early. Lord, you said you will hear us in the day of trouble. The God of Jacob, defend us. Send us help from your sanctuary. Heavenly Father, you are not deaf that you can't hear us. Your hands are not short that you won't help us. Father, this Cayman Islands land we love, we commit it into your hands right now with its leadership. The Governor, His Excellency, the Honorable Premier, the Honorable Speaker of the House, the members of the opposition, all leaders in this regime. We commit them into your hands right now. As we have stepped into this press conference, Lord, to do business for the kingdom, to do business for this nation, we ask that you will intervene. Like you've granted wisdom, knowledge, and understanding to King Solomon, the wisest man who have ever lived, I do command, Lord, at this time, you echoed in your word, command ye me. I command wisdom, knowledge, and understanding upon the leadership of this nation right now. May you subdue principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness in high places over our Premier and over the members of Parliament who stand around him to lead this nation. Father God, as we look and see trouble in India, trouble in Mecca, trouble around the world, thousands are dying. Lord, we ask you to intervene. We command the blessings of the Lord upon this land. We command in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ that like you have given favor to the children of Israel, while Israel had 10 plagues, Lord, you prevailed for 2.5 million Israelites, and you spared them throughout the death. With the many plagues released in Egypt, the little area that is called Goshen was protected from the diseases. So we ask right now, Father, that the same favor you have shown to Egypt, those Israelites in Goshen. I pray you'll show it to the Cayman Islands as the Premier, the Governor, His Excellency, the Speaker of the House, and all the ministers of the House of Parliament, and all people of this land will bow their knees and worship you in the beauty of holiness. Father, I ask at this time that there will be strength, there will be courage, there will be wisdom. Let the wisdom from on high override the system of our own mind, and let this be a great nation. You said, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. And I believe that this is a God-fearing country. For those men and women in this nation who have not yet given their lives to Jesus Christ, remind them, Lord, what you said in your words. The fool had said in his heart, there is no God. Lord, we have just come to a time of election when we are now stabilizing the parliamentary. We pray, Lord God, that this press conference will be the answer to the questions of the Cayman Islands where settling is concerned. May the hand of God right now be upon this house, your men, your women. And as we're nearing the ending of the dispensation of grace, to have the climaxing of the change of the governmental rule of planet Earth, equip these men right now, anoint them and inspire them. Let it be said across the globe, never a land be blessed as the Cayman Islands. We pronounce that blessing right now. Touch the hearts and lives of over 60,000 people, over 144 nationalities. We pray right now that the hand of God will be upon this land. Principalities and powers and spiritual wickedness will never prevail over the government of this nation, but this country will be ruled with the reverential fear and wisdom of Almighty God. Bring mighty Holy Ghost revival across this land that will serve this nation. Your servants who lead in politics and in the ecclesiastical body will be blessed, will be satisfied in Jesus' name. And everybody say amen and amen.
Thank you, Bishop Clark. We now go to Premier and Minister for Sustainability and Climate Resiliency, the Honorable Wayne Panton.
Thank you very much, Donna. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm pleased to welcome the media and all of our viewers and listeners to this first COVID-19 update by the packed government. We come here today before you with an urgent message that is vital to the future well-being of the Cayman Islands. As many of you know, the stock of the COVID-19 vaccine provided to the Cayman Islands by the United Kingdom earlier this year is set to expire at the end of June, with some 14,000 doses still remaining. While the primary purpose of this briefing is in relation to COVID-19 and our need to significantly increase the uptake of the vaccine, it will also be useful to have information on the current and projected financial position of government. You will see that I have my colleagues, I'll start with my colleague on my immediate right, the Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance. And going down, we have the Minister for Governor. I'll just skip you for the moment. Going down, we have the Minister for Health and Wellness. That is a new change that we are making to the name of the ministry. So that is being debuted at this point, and I think it's a reflection of a new focus of this government in relation to health. And then we have the Minister for Tourism and Transport. So they'll be providing additional information in relation to the vaccine stock. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't think that the Cayman Islands can waste a precious resource like this. With our neighbors and others around the world desperate to have an increased supply. So we are imploring all of our fellow residents to please make the necessary arrangements to attend the Owen Roberts Vaccination Center as soon as possible to get their first shots. This is essential to our future potential to reopen our borders and restart tourism. And we are within striking distance of this now. You will hear from the Minister of Health and the Minister of Tourism of our plans to encourage the increase of the uptake of the vaccine in the coming weeks. You will hear that we want you to join us this Saturday at 10 a.m. to get your first shots, along with those members of government who were delaying having their shots until after the election. We want you to join us then. Please, the Minister for Tourism will confirm in his remarks exactly why it's in your interest to do so. In terms of the reopening plan, based on the vaccine uptake, our position for the moment is the same as the plan established with the previous government. You will hear from the Minister of Health of some of our thoughts around changes to testing and quarantine periods as more and more of our people are vaccinated. But I want you to understand that we will remain on the conservative side, and any changes depend very much on our people who have not yet been vaccinated, deciding to be a part of the solution by joining the rest of us who have. The last government had set the target vaccination rate at which borders would reopen at around 70 to 80% of the total population. We believe that while 80% may be difficult to achieve, 70% is much more doable. If we have persons committed to acting in a manner that is reflective of the greater good, just like the way we rallied as a community, staying home and limiting movement for several challenging months in 2020 to keep ourselves and each other safe. Those of us with no work or reduced work due to the impact of COVID-19 on the tourism industry have been waiting anxiously on reopening developments for some time. So have those of us looking forward to reuniting with family members around the world, despite living in the comparative safety of the Cayman Islands bubble. If we take the step to get vaccinated, it will not only keep our community safe, it will move us that much closer towards prosperity for all in the Cayman Islands. In these circumstances, it would be a crime to waste the invaluable resources that the vaccine doses represent, while the rest of the world is scrambling to be in the fortunate position that we are in. Now is the time, my fellow Caymanians and residents, to come together and act in the best interests of our country. If you have already had the vaccine, but you have friends and family that have not, talk to them and take them to get vaccinated. For those of you listening or watching who have not, please consider the greater public good and make a decision to get the vaccine. Approximately 1.2 billion people in the world have decided they should be a part of the solution for the world. And we want those of you who have not yet had it to make that same decision for our country, the Cayman Islands, and for your friends and for your families. And remember, that means you have to get your first shots by June 9th at the latest. But don't wait until then. Do it now or join us on Saturday, May 8th at 10 a.m. and get it done with your government who are going to be leading from the front. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Premier Pranton. We now go to Your Excellency.
Yes, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here again. It feels very familiar, but also unfamiliar with a new set of colleagues. And let me just say again, it's a real pleasure to be here alongside the Premier and the new ministerial team. And let me reiterate again that I and the civil service look forward very much to working with them and supporting them in their objectives. I just want to add a little bit to what the Premier has said about the supply of vaccines, particularly more with a sort of a UK angle to it. But I first just want to say I greatly appreciate what the Premier has just said about the uptake of vaccines. And I think first it is worth just underlining that on any international comparison, our vaccine rollout is doing very well. I think over 70% of over 16s have have had one dose, and we're near the top of many global league tables. HSA have done a fantastic job, and I thank all of those in the community who've had the vaccine. But I think, as we all know, and as the Premier has just said, in April, the take-up really slowed. In fact, I think it actually stalled in April, although the last couple of days we've seen an uptick, which is really positive. So maybe some of the messages are being received. I think, as everybody knows, since the 5th of February, the UK has sent us 6 deliveries of the Pfizer vaccine at no cost to Cayman, and that is enough to vaccinate 2/3 of our total population, which is about 82% of everyone over 16. And we know that this vaccine gives 95% protection against COVID, and it significantly reduces the chance of a vaccinated person spreading the virus. Now, the latest delivery, as the Premier has just said as well, was at the end of June, and that means we do have this deadline, and I don't need to repeat what the Premier has just said, but 9th of June is the deadline for getting the first dose with the 14,000 doses that we have left. And again, we can all see the desperate situation in other parts of the world caused by a lack of vaccine. And I think there would be significant outrage and even distress in some quarters if we weren't able to use the vaccines that we have been sent. So like the Premier and everyone on this panel, I implore you to come forward if you have not yet done so. And the vaccine not only protects you, but it protects the wider community. Whilst the UK is committed to continue supplying us with all the vaccines we need, including adapted doses to tackle any new strains of COVID, and possibly booster vaccines in the autumn if they are needed, I'm sure you will appreciate that for me as governor, it is difficult to ask for more vaccine if we haven't used the supplies that we currently have. And I keep hearing that many people are waiting until there's more information about the vaccines. But again, as the Premier said, 1.1 billion people have had a vaccine dose across the world already, and the time for waiting is really over. And the evidence is overwhelming that vaccines are not only safe, they stop serious illness and death. And the new government remains rightly cautious on any reopening of the border until more people are vaccinated, and that's something that I, as governor, strongly support. So I, like everyone else, I encourage everyone to do their bit and take the vaccine, which will put us in a much stronger position going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. We now go to the Minister for Health, the Honourable Mrna Turner.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Donna. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is indeed my pleasure to be here with all of you today in my first press briefing as Minister. I am also happy, as alluded to by our Honourable Premier, to state that my ministry is incorporating this wellness focus that has led to the new announcement of the name, Ministry of Health and Wellness. It speaks volumes as to what a refreshing approach and just a 360 uptake of where I intend with the ladies and gentlemen of my ministry want to take the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Thanks to everyone who has reached out to me since the commencement as minister, and I want to just say publicly how appreciative I am to all of the well wishes and support, and I'm especially humbled and pleased by the warmth that I have been receiving from the ladies and gentlemen of the ministry. And I know that moving forward, great things can be expected from us coming out, and in the coming days, in short order, I will be visiting the various departments that falls under my ministry's remit. As you have all understood from the Honourable Premier and his remarks, that we're currently putting a strong focus on definitely getting Cayman vaccinated and just bolstering the uptake in the vaccination program. I have been personally vaccinated. I took my first dose on Wednesday, and I can honestly say I've had nothing. I came back to work and I'm feeling great. My husband took it and 8 other friends joined me with it. I got on the phone because I knew that there was a batch, they're all mixed, and I said, we got to use it. Lo and behold, 8 people followed me. So congratulations to those. And I'm hoping to see more of you come out on Saturday morning to join us in our fight to get this vaccination going and to show the use or interest as a jurisdiction in the importance of this vaccine. Now, to be fully vaccinated, again, we've heard individuals need 2 doses, and 21 days after your first dose is when you receive the second one. Since this existing stock, and we got to repeat this, we can't hammer this home enough, will expire at the end of June. We want to make sure that people grab on and jump onto this wagon right now and not leave it, even though you have until the 9th of June to take the first dose. We want you to embrace it now, so that it's just not this mad rush out there. So I am publicly appealing to all of you to just go and get vaccinated. And if you want to be a part of my colleagues and I this Saturday, come on out to the Owen Roberts International Airport and join us in being a part of this vaccination process. Now, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, along with the Public Health and the Health Services Authority, will continue to encourage many residents as possible. I will be meeting directly with the Health Services Authority in trying to get mobile units out. More discussions are going on with that. And we are a blessed jurisdiction to be in this very peculiar and golden opportunity to have a product like this. When we look at seeing what's happening around the world, just today in international headlines, that vaccines are becoming quite scarce in many countries around the world, and most notably India. My thoughts and prayers go out to so many other countries as well that is adversely affected by this and what is being experienced in this deadly disease. We are in a very peculiar and safe position, but we do not want to be taken over by complacency. So again, I cannot reiterate it enough. Let's go. Roll up your sleeves. Let's get vaccinated. I would like to also thank the UK government and His Excellency the Governor for ensuring that us right here in the Cayman Islands is able to receive and has received sufficient stock of the vaccine to protect our population. And from the receipt of such, we rapidly mobilized our public health and the wider team to deploying the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine across our islands. But there is still a lot of work to be done, and you will hear that sentiment be shared here this afternoon by my colleagues, because this is a collaborative effort, and that's why we're including the Ministry of Tourism to join us in this program. I want to understand that we as a community must do our part. Dr. Lee will give us the current stats on the vaccination numbers, and I'm quite sure that will come up with what we have. And we want to bolster that more in our efforts as we continue in meeting this deadline before 9th of June. Now, I understand that there may still be some hesitancy. We're hoping that with all of our efforts in the PR, the combination of our comms team, and by the use of social media influencers, that we will dispel any rumors and any myths and make people more embracing of this exercise. I would like to also wish and acknowledge the tremendous amount of work and dedication of our hard-working Ministry of Health and Wellness, Public Health, the HSA and their various teams, and other healthcare providers with their sustained hard work to control this virus over the past long year. But I especially want to thank today Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, Medical Officer of Health, and also Miss Angela Tanzanilo Stewarts, who's Forensic DNA Specialist, Quality Manager at the Forensic Science Laboratory at the Public Health Department. I am so eager to see what goes on behind the scenes and to really highlight the work that goes on and really show my appreciation for the ladies and gentlemen that make up that team as well. There are other individuals such as at the HSA, our CEO, Ms. Lizette Howell, Dr. Hazel Brown, and their teams at our ministry level. I also wish to thank our chief officer, my chief officer, Ms. Nellie Pucci, and the CMO, Dr. John Lee, for their tireless work throughout this. Many days I know they were walking these hollowed halls in darkness sometimes, but they were here and they're still here. And publicly, I've watched you. Now that I'm in this higher position, I want to thank all of you for keeping at this, because we're doing it for love of country and the betterment of our people. Now we know that from a cabinet perspective, we will be rolling out some more as we embark in considering, not without consultation of you, the people, and working closely with our medical professionals in regards to engaging in the conversations of the opening of our borders. But please bear in mind, people come first, and we will never do it haphazardly. We will do it as safely as possible. One of the things that we are in discussion and we're leaning towards is right now under the current regulations, we're considering removing the 72-hour PCR testing prior to entering the Cayman Islands, as long as travelers can show that they have been vaccinated no less than 2 weeks. This is one of a number of things that we are considering at this level, and more information will be shared with you as we move forward. What our whole mission is today, as we say, that will be reiterated by my colleague, is the uptake in the vaccines that are about to expire. The risk is getting seriously ill and dying from this, but if we do our part in getting vaccination, even if another strain gets within our shores, we know that we would have protected ourselves by doing our part for ourselves, our friends, our neighbors, and our loved ones. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Minister Turner. Now we go to the Minister for Tourism and Transport, the Honourable Kenneth Bryan.
Thank you, Donna, and good afternoon to all of those who are joining us here in the studio, and to all of those who are tuning in online and on social media. As you have already heard, today's press briefing focuses on a subject that is vitally important to our country at this time. And I'd like to thank the Honourable Premier for allowing me the opportunity to participate in this press conference to give an update to the public on some of my Ministry of Tourism's initiatives, specifically to the ongoing support to the workers in the tourism industry, and also to our commitment to the national vaccination program. As many of you would recall, when COVID-19 pandemic forced the closure of our borders in March of 2020, our tourism and hospitality sectors were immediately impacted, and they remain these areas that are most affected over a year later. Prior to the pandemic, tourism accounted for 25 to 30% of our country's GDP and played a significant role in driving our economy forward. But without tourists arriving on our shores, the millions of dollars that would normally have been received from this sector are having to be supplied by the core government's revenue. I'm certain that everyone can understand that this is not a suitable or sustainable option that we can continue over a long period of time. As the new Minister of Tourism and Transport, I'm taking every opportunity to familiarize myself with the various departments and statutory authorities within my portfolio. Although I'm not fully briefed on every aspect of my ministry's work quite yet, I'm very much aware of the number one priority for our tourism industry and for our country at this time, is ensuring that the people are protected from the coronavirus. The only way for us to do this is by having a wide cross-section of our population vaccinated. In order for us to return to some of the levels of normalcy as before, it is vital for us to achieve the 80% vaccination target that has been set by public health. Only then can we start to think about safely reopening our borders and rebuilding our tourism industry, which in turn will strengthen our economy. In the meanwhile, we are vigorously pursuing that goal. The PAC administration is cognizant of the tremendous strain that the health crisis is placing on our tourism workers who have lost their jobs. We currently have 3,371 people receiving the stipend, and we know that many of them, this is the only means of income for them while the borders are closed. Since taking my role as the Minister of Tourism, I've heard numerous concerns about the stipend program being discontinued. I would like to reassure all of the recipients that these rumors are false, and I can confirm that the PAC administration is extending the program and will continue with payments. The length of time in terms of the number of months the stipends will continue is still being considered, and further announcements will be made in regard once those decisions are made. So feel comforted that money will come. This is a government that cares for its people, and we are united in our commitment to doing all that we can to ease the pressures our people face due to this pandemic. I thank God every day that we continue to remain safe under the guidance of public health and through the collaborative effort by the government ministries and entities that work around the clock to keep us safe. But I think everyone knows that we can't stay in this bubble, separated from the rest of the world forever. As I said earlier, the most effective and safest way to start that process is by having 80% of the population vaccinated. I know some of you have concerns about the vaccination process, and to be honest, I had many questions myself. But I've heard enough from Dr. Lee and the program board and those who work closely with the scientific research to convince me that the vaccine is safe enough to accept. I have asked all the hard questions, and I'm satisfied with the answers, to the point where I'm able to confidently say that I have no hesitation in taking the vaccine myself. In fact, I will be taking my first shot this weekend, as you previously heard. Being vaccinated is one of the most effective ways for you to protect yourself and your loved ones from COVID-19, and the protection is vital to our economic recovery. Because it is important on so many levels, I'm appealing to everyone within the sound of my voice, if I can get it back, to please take advantage of this golden opportunity that many other countries don't have, to go out there and get your shot while they're still available. I will go even one step further, and I'm inviting all the people who have not yet been vaccinated to join me and my other members of the PAC administration this Saturday at 10 a.m. at the airport, and I challenge you to come and take the vaccination with me. To demonstrate how much we want to encourage you to get vaccinated, the Ministry of Tourism will be hosting an island-wide draw. Now listen to this one carefully, because this might be the thing that causes you to want to get the vaccination. The tourism ministry will be hosting an island-wide draw for everyone who gets vaccinated from the 8th of May to June the 8th. Will be entered into for a draw for some amazing prizes, and there's still more to come, including tickets on Cayman Airways to Cayman Brac, to Miami, and to any destination that Cayman Airways flies. We also have some staycation packages, some dinner packages, free entries to some of the top attractions across the Cayman Islands. I'm extremely proud of our tourism partners who've already come on board to support this prize draw, and I sincerely thank them for their generosity, especially at this time. Because this is an island-wide initiative, I'm also inviting the entire business community to be a part of this national effort to help us sweeten the deal by donating some other prizes. So Flow, Digicel, and all those other businesses, come on board. To offer some great prizes such as laptops, phones, TVs, gift vouchers at the supermarket, at the gas station, at CUC, anything that will entice us all to protect ourselves from COVID-19. No prize is too big or too small, and I would really like you to encourage the businesses around you to help offer up prizes that are so amazing that the people will be rushing to be vaccinated just for a chance to win. Anyone who wants to donate a prize can email the ministry at mottvax@CaymanIslands.ky, and let me read that out slowly so you get it. mottvax@CaymanIslands.ky. That stands for Ministry of Tourism and Transport. To let us know how you would like to contribute, because I expect a lot of emails by the end of this press briefing. And as you heard from the ministry, the Ministry of Health, the minister said earlier, We have enough supplies to vaccinate close to 7,000 people, so we really need a massive response from the public and from the business community to drive our vaccination percentages to 80%. I look forward to seeing a huge crowd at the airport on Saturday at 10 a.m., joining myself and all of the other colleagues who haven't got it. Kathy Wilkes, I'm watching you. I'm going to get more people to come than you. Even though some of them have already been vaccinated, they will be coming along, so please join us. It will be a fun atmosphere with some music and refreshments, and I'm encouraging everyone who hasn't been vaccinated to make the effort to join us so that we can all protect and keep Cayman safe and plan to slowly and safely and smartly reopen our borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Bryan. We now go to Deputy Premier and Minister for Finance, Economic Development and Labour, the Honourable Christopher Saunders.
Thank you, Donna. A very good afternoon to the viewing and listening public, and I want to thank all the reporters that are here also. I want to use this opportunity to provide an update on the current financial position of the government for the first quarter for the year ended, for the first quarter for the period ended March 31, 2020, as well as provide a tentative forecast for the full financial year based on information that we currently have today. For the three-month period ended 31st of March 2021, I can provide the following information. Government earned a surplus of $196.2 million for the first 3 months of the year. As in previous years, these fees or this income is driven by fees earned from the financial services industry, where most companies are actually required to actually pay most of their annual fees within the first 3 months of the year. The original budget for the 2021 year, which was compiled in late 2019, which is more than a year ago, forecasted a surplus of $168.8 million for the first 3 months of 2021. So in short, the results at the end of March 2021 were $27.4 million better than what was previously budgeted. Additionally, when compared to the same period last year, the results at the end of March this year is an improvement of $23.9 million over the same period last year, where we had a surplus of $172.3 million. Additionally, individual statutory authorities and government companies, which we normally refer to as SAGCs, they also had a net surplus of $6.4 million. Now, previously, we had actually budgeted that these SAGCs would have had a deficit of $9.2 million. So, in essence, for the first quarter of this year, the SAGC's performance is actually $15.6 million more than what was also budgeted. When we combine central government surplus of $196.2 million, coupled with the $6.4 million net surplus from SAGCs, the entire public sector had a surplus of $202.6 million at the end of March 2021, which is $43.1 million better than budget and $25.4 million better than where we was at the same time last year. The conclusion that can be reached from those comparisons is that the government is doing better in 2021 than it did in 2020 with respect to surplus and results for the entire public service. I also want to use this opportunity to highlight some further information on government's financial position as of the 31st of March 2021, and they are as follows. Debt owed by the government was $243.8 million, and this balance continues to decline as government continues to make repayment on schedule. The government debt to GDP is actually 5.1%, which is actually one of the best ratios that you can have in anywhere in the world. And also, I just want to make a note that the government will continue to refrain from borrowing as long as possible, but this may become necessary if the borders remain closed and the economy is not operating at its full potential. So, but what I can say, as the minister said earlier, the Minister of Tourism and Transport, is that we will continue to provide financial assistance to many within our community as long as we can, recognizing the challenges that many people face. The net assets of government, which is the assets minus the liabilities at the end of March, was $1.7 billion. In terms of bank balances, at the end of March, the government had a total of $611.2 million. And we should note that $172.1 million of this is actually money that is reserved, what we call as reserved or restricted deposits. And of that, the two largest amount represented in that group is $104.4 million, which is government general reserve, which of course can't be used without approval from Parliament. And also including that 172.1 million is $58 million, which is in the Environmental Protection Fund. And that money also cannot be touched without the approval of the Finance Committee. So when we basically look at it, when we take away those restricted money, we basically end up with 439.1 million, which is actually what we can refer to as operating cash and deposits. So that is money that we can basically use freely. One of the things that I just want to touch on is also equity investments and capital expenditures. And to note is that for the first 3 months, government provided equity investments to the ministry's portfolios and offices, totaling $10 million. We also did an equity investment to SAGCs, a total of $2.3 million, and $4.6 million was expended on the creation of executive assets, which is largely mostly going to government roads and so forth. With regards to the full performance for this year, I just want to note that the pre-election economic and financial update, which was gazetted on the 17th of March, which was before the last general elections and before this government came into office, the government forecasted the following. A central government would have a deficit of $98.4 million, and that SAGCs will suffer a deficit of $59 million. So in short, we are expecting the entire public sector to have a deficit of $157.4 million for the 2021 full financial year. Again, just to kind of note that the first quarter performance is normally driven by a lot of the fees that are collected by the financial services industry. And then normally throughout the rest of the year, we'll have other part comes on, mostly the tourism industry. But again, our borders remain closed. What I can say, as my other colleagues have said, is that this current administration is committed to reducing this deficit, but a lot of it will depend on several factors, such as improving our vaccination rate, which is our top priority for this government. Additionally, I also want to make it clear that there'll be no cuts in domestic spending. And as a matter of fact, this government will be looking at ways to encourage funds remaining in our domestic market. Two such areas that we believe that would be very positive is if we can look at encouraging more people to support our local farmers and also being more fuel efficient. We believe that that will actually reduce money leaving the country to buy agricultural products that can be grown here, and also money that we're basically sending overseas to buy fuel and other stuff. So again, energy efficiency is one of the important things in our economy at this point, but for this government at this time. My friends, we're still living in a world where there's a global pandemic. Earlier today, we were reminded at the National Prayer Breakfast that how blessed a country we are and how blessed a people we are. But by all means, we still have a lot of challenges. And what I can say is that this government is committed to meet those challenges. We also decided to go with the policy of putting people over profits. And as a result, there'll be no decisions that will be taken by this government that risk the health and safety of our people. We know that many people are still experiencing hardships from the high cost of living, which continues to impact their quality of life. But I believe that we have the right team with the right leadership to meet those challenges. In closing, I take this opportunity to thank my Premier, Cabinet and caucus colleagues, the Governor, Deputy Governor, and all the public servants that will work with this government in making significant improvements to our island finances and also our quality of life. I now turn it back over to you, Donna, and the Honourable Premier. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Saunders. Before we move on, I'd like to just say that the Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Samuel Williams Rodriguez, is here in the studio with us, so he may have to answer some questions at some point. Now I'd like to call on Dr. John Lee, the Chief Medical Officer.
Good afternoon. As is my wont, I'll provide you with some figures relating to the vaccination and PCR testing. There are a total of 545 people who have been positive for SARS-CoV-2 in the Cayman Islands, of which 12 have been on Cayman BRAC. At the moment, we have 7 asymptomatic people who are positive, nobody who's symptomatic, and 536 have recovered. 118 people are in government-operated facilities for quarantine, and there are 546 in the very successful Quarantine at Home program. We have given a stunning 69,299 injections in our vaccination program, which represents 57% of people having had at least one injection against COVID-19 disease, and 50% having completed their full course of 2 of either the Pfizer or the AstraZeneca vaccination. That 50% has also been steadily climbing, which is good to see. So the difference between the numbers totally vaccinated and those having had their first dose is getting smaller and smaller. Governor's already pointed out the fact that we have had an uptick in take-up of vaccinations with our strong messaging, and we really hope that that continues. There have been fairly good increases both the day before yesterday and yesterday, and we hope that continues until we've used up our supply, which should be enough to vaccinate an additional new 7,000 odd people. It's really important to pay attention to the fact that places like India, South America are suffering so badly with COVID-19 disease, and to realize what a huge opportunity we have to get vaccinated and to protect ourselves and the community. We have seen that some countries have perhaps too early tried to reopen their borders when their vaccination rates were not high enough, and they have suffered outbreaks subsequent to that. If you look into the detail of those countries where we have seen that, very often it's the case that people who have had one of the what we might call one of the vaccinations that's been approved by myself, you'll see that none of those people, or very few of those people, have become seriously ill or died. I'm using in particular the example of Bermuda here, where many of the people who were actually have, in the newest outbreak, suffered, had not had the complete course of vaccinations and had perhaps only had a very early, had only had their jab and had probably actually contracted the virus at or around the time they were given that jab. It also is important about the type of vaccine, and here in Cayman we are exceedingly lucky to have the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine and also a small supply of the AstraZeneca vaccine, both of which are exceedingly successful in preventing serious illness and death and also in stopping transmission of the disease. But we need to get the density of coverage up in the community, and only by doing that, because of the amount of travel we have that affects our country, which doesn't necessarily affect other much larger countries where many parts of the population will be relatively sedentary or will stay in the areas where they live. We are affected by an awful lot of travel, so we wish to have a much higher level of vaccination than perhaps some other countries would need in order to give us population coverage and control and safety. Additionally, we don't know absolutely what's going to happen with the variants of concern. That's in some days $1 million question, as we used to say. It's probably now the $1 billion question. But it is the variants of concern that everybody is looking to, that as the countries which have achieved very good vaccination rates, what happens, for example, the United Kingdom, when they begin to allow more travel, and everybody around the world is watching that space exceedingly carefully. Governor has mentioned that booster doses are probably on the horizon, probably towards the end of the year, and some of those boosters will also cover variants of concern or may in fact be boosters of our original dose, and it appears from early trials that these are going to be very successful in keeping SARS-CoV-2 under control. You'll be aware that the vaccine schedule is given on the HSA's website. It's also given out by some of the news outlets on their front pages, where you can click through and find out where vaccination sites are available. We hope to continue to take advantage of the opportunity to use the Mrna Bay site intermittently in order to give people, and other sites around the island, in order to give people as best access as we can to the vaccination. Finally, one last thing, it is really great news that Health Canada have now approved the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine for use in 12 to 16-year-olds. But here in Cayman, we are working very closely with Public Health England and the UK government, and we have been provided with vaccines as a result of an agreement with them. And when they have said it's okay for us to go ahead, we will consider vaccinating that group. I'm hoping that will be as soon as possible. Please believe me on that score, but we will have to negotiate that arrangement with the United Kingdom. Thank you, Donna.
Dr. Lee, we're now going to open the floor for questions from the media, beginning with Reshma from The Compass.
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, panel. Dr. Lee, I just want to start with that last point that you raised, if you don't mind, on the vaccinations with 12-year-olds to 15. I know you said discussions are ongoing. Given the urgency that we need to get our vaccination program rolling out with the June deadline coming up, how soon do you think we'll have any formal confirmation from Public Health England on the vaccinations for this age group?
I have to say we have plenty of adults to give the vaccine to. There are, tens of thousands of people who have not yet come forward. So we really are looking to that group to come forward first. Clearly, when vaccinations are available for children, we will give them to them at the moment we get the permission to do so. But we will also be asking at that time, the United Kingdom, hopefully we will have used up our vaccinations, could they please resupply us, give us some more vaccines as the group has now grown, and we have every confidence that they'll do that.
Okay, now, Premier Panton talked about a 70% target. Is that the adult population or overall population that we're talking about? Because, we've had this question.
So the history of where this figure has come from has been that at the start of the pandemic, when people first started to look at what it might require to achieve herd immunity, we were looking at between 65 to 75%. So people were plumping for a number of 70%. When we talk about herd immunity, you're talking about the entire population. So it's not specifically any age group. So whenever I use that term, I'm not specifying any age group. I mean the whole population. The reason that that figure has been pushed up and that we wish to get our vaccination rates as high as we possibly can is this issue of the variants of concern, which means that the vaccines may not work as well as well as the original virus, so to speak, and that's why we need to push that level up. Herd immunity is basically derived from looking at a vaccine that is 100% effective and then looking at the so-called R number that we previously discussed, and it's a mathematical figure. And if you start to introduce a lot of variables, it becomes very difficult to be exact and say it's this figure. All I know is we really need to push our vaccination rates higher than the original estimate because we don't have vaccines that are 100% effective. They are less than 100% effective, and because we have these variants of concerns, which are essentially a wild card. So the best possible protection is for everyone to get vaccinated.
So at what point do you think that we'll hit that 70%? Can you give us an estimated timeline? I don't know if Premier Panton can do that. Are we looking at June?
The timeline really depends on when people come forward. All I am hoping to do is to making the vaccine as accessible to everyone as possible, and to give them both the physical access and all the information that they need, and encouragement, which is why everybody's encouraging you to come forward for the vaccine. When we actually hit that, I don't know. I hope we overshoot it. I would really like to overshoot it because then I know that Cayman is going to be well protected. I would like an overshoot. But we must make sure that we give the right access, and once we feel that we've done that through everything we possibly can, that's the time when Cabinet would need to sit down and see where we are.
Okay, now just staying with the vaccines, we did have the AstraZeneca vaccine, some limited quantities come in. Can you provide us with an update on what's happening with those vaccines? Because I know there was a particular timeline.
So a number of the vaccines have been given out, but we're also giving some of them to people who've already had their first dose. So that we have some people who've had a first dose some other place, and they're coming and they're having their second dose. If somebody really wants to have the AstraZeneca, I'm saying to the staff we could probably go ahead, because it is very possible that should we have a large proportion of those, we could probably get a resupply of that from the United Kingdom should we need. It also has quite a large window. We've got up to 12 weeks to give the second dose, so there's plenty of wiggle room in order for us to find a solution to that. However, if you were intending to get both your doses out of that batch that we've received, that date passed on Monday, in order that you should get your second dose before they expire at the end of May.
So for those who may not understand, like me, what does that mean for the doses then? Are we going to have any wastage from the supply that we have now?
I can't really tell because I don't know how many people are going to come for their second dose who may have had their first dose elsewhere. So there may be some wastage in that, but I can't really tell until the 30th of May passes.
And
31st of May, sorry.
I'm guessing you don't have any figures that you can share with us how many have utilized the AstraZeneca yet?
It's somewhere 20 or less. It's that sort of order of magnitude, but we only had 100. It wasn't a very large amount.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So I will turn to the panel now. Thanks, Dr. Lee. I would like to start with the vaccination program for the government itself. Premier, can you tell me how many of your ministers are yet to be vaccinated? Can you share some numbers with us?
I as far as I'm aware, I haven't had their cards produced to me, or so I can count it up. But I think we have at least 4 that were waiting. They were afraid of any potential side effects impacting their ability during the election campaign. So that's why they were holding off. Now that's out of the way, and they want to be leading from the front and helping to set an example. So that's why we're having this initiative to have everyone go down to the Wynne Roberts site on Saturday morning to watch the government members and to be there when, celebrate with them, and hopefully those who haven't had it go and get theirs as well.
Are you fully vaccinated now?
I am fully vaccinated. I took the chance, and I had it during I had my last dose on March 30th. I thought I was not going to have any side effects, but they were quite mild. I sort of ran out of energy the following day, and I had some fevers during a campaign meeting. So I was sweating profusely for reasons other than just being under question from my constituents. So I am fully vaccinated.
Okay.
I absolutely believe in it. I think it is the only way through this pandemic that we have going on globally, and I believe it is the key to Cayman being able to get back to some degree of a normal operating economy with tourism operating.
Okay. Now, I know you're rolling out the public campaign to encourage members of the public who haven't been vaccinated to get vaccinated. Are you considering any sort of mandatory vaccinations, for example, with work permit holders, as some of the overseas territories have done a mandatory requirement for vaccinations?
So that is an issue that obviously we are aware of, given that it appears that it was done in Turks and Caicos. It's not something that we have actively considered at this point. There are issues around it, and until we can get more clarity around those issues, it's not something that we're actively going to consider. But I think from our perspective, we want to implore our people to go out and get the vaccine. That's the focus we're taking at this point. Just trying to encourage and cajole people to go and get it, because it is the key. It is the key for us going forward.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in terms of the vaccinations that have already happened, the documentation that's being given to individuals who are fully vaccinated, is that something that will be accepted for international travel? Can you say if that is something that people who wish to travel overseas now? I know it's still essential travel only, not that I'm encouraging people to go on leisure trips, but would it be accepted? We had a question from a member of the public come in on that.
It would be difficult for me to provide clarity around that at this point, but I would imagine that there, on the face of it, there should be that should be acceptable, but perhaps the governor might have more specific information.
Yeah, sure. The only thing I can add is that I think we have asked the UK that if they roll out some kind of vaccine passport, that the overseas territories are included as part of that, because we've been part of a rollout of the vaccine programme that the UK has provided. But it looks as it's not clear yet, but it looks as if in the UK they'll be using some kind of app where you will have to show your test results, your vaccine, and the big focus in the UK is on getting holidays to Europe going. So it's just too soon, really, to give you any real clarity. But obviously, we're watching it all very closely and need to make sure that we're in the right place as soon as that begins.
Okay, thank you, Governor. Since you're on the mic, I might as well ask you your question. What updates can you provide us on the BA flights? We are watching Travel Cayman religiously for updates on the dates. What can you tell us about what's happening with those flights?
Well, I know Minister Bryan was on a discussion this morning with BA, so he may be able to add more. But I understand that we are keen to keep going the current sort of fortnightly arrangement, but also BA are quite keen to get back to a commercial situation, particularly with the US. So I think we have another couple of flights in the pipeline to be confirmed soon. I think the discussions still continue on what happens in the longer term. As Governor, I am very keen to ensure we maintain the BA Airlink, and I know the government shares that as well. But I don't know whether Minister Bryan, you want to add more from your discussion this morning. Does that cover
Governor,
it?
I think you said it quite succinctly.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just keep watching Travel Cayman for the updates.
Yeah.
Minister Bryan.
I'll just add that we will get probably another update in about 2 to 3 weeks as to further flights. But for now, we will definitely be having more, at least 3 more if my memory serves me well. But like the governor said, BA is definitely one to continue. How we continue is dependent a lot on how the vaccine go, whether we maintain how it is now or whether we do more flights. But we don't want to say that and make people's hopes get too high. So we'll definitely be giving you some more info in the coming weeks.
All right, thank you. You touched on the tourism stipend. That's something that a lot of people are very interested in. You did not say for how long it will be continued. You did say you'll provide us with an update, but would you be considering, or would government be considering, any increases to the stipend? And how soon do you think you can tell us what's the longevity for that stipend?
Well, we haven't had an opportunity to caucus on it yet. But based on the budgets that the Honourable Minister has suggested, I would be encouraging the government to maintain it at the current 1,500. As you know, we're still not making the money that we used to. The length of time has been discussed a little bit with the Premier, and I think I wouldn't want to say how long without having a full caucus with the other members of the government. But we want, the most important thing is those who are receiving the stipends not to be concerned that they will not be receiving, because the current date of the end date is the end of June. We will continue on after that. Obviously, it makes no sense to say for the next 6 months if we are very successful with our vaccine program, and then we can have a soft reopening and tourism starts to go again. So we have to analyze all of those factors. I think we would be better suited to give you a timeline once we get closer to the end of the vaccination, so Dr. Lee can help advise the government as to where we're going to go with the reopening.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Turner, you touched on something that a lot of people would be very excited about, the removal of the 72-hour testing. Is there any timeline that you can give us for when we'll have actual confirmation of the changes to the regulations and restrictions?
Well, the current regulations are still in effect, and they are up for renewal on the 19th. So with more discussions being held, we will roll out the official start date of that in the coming days.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Saunders.
Sorry, Reshma, if I could just clarify in relation to that particular point, that the pre-flight testing there is only in relation to those individuals who we can verify have been provided the vaccine by the HSE. So that is not relating to external sources of the vaccine.
Oh, okay. Well, that's a big.
So it's like Caymanians returning home, for example.
Yeah.
If we implement that, wouldn't have to take the the pre-flight 72-hour PCR test.
Okay, thank you. I just have two more quick questions. One for Mr. Saunders in relation to government finances. Based on the figures that you shared, how long of a period do we have this money to run on? Is it going to last us for the next 3 months, 6 months? Can you provide that kind of detail?
No, well, from a cash standpoint, you may recall that government also did secure $30 million in terms of line of credit. So cash-wise, there is no issue with regards to cash. What we can say is that just briefly looking at the results for April, one of the things that I've been tracking, especially with just finishing, is that we looked at customs duty, for example. For months April and May last year, it was averaging around $10 million for those 2 months. Then we basically had the pension withdrawals, which put a good chunk of almost $500 million inside the local economy. And what we saw was the average in terms of customs duty going up from 10 million in April and May last year to 16 million. The first quarter this year was a little bit kind of down a little bit because we noticed the first quarter custom results came in around average around 15 million. So we wanted to see what April is looking like, and April now is actually close to 30 million. So we're seeing a positive with that regard because we wanted to make sure that we keep the domestic economy going. Additionally, one of the things we're also looking at is stamp duty. That has also been pushing our economy. For the first 3 months of this year, it was averaging around 6 million per month. And just for the month of April, it was the highest stamp duty ever in the history of Cayman, at around 12 million. So again, we're seeing that trending in the right way. So the main thing for us is really keeping the domestic economy going. And our main purpose right now is just to make sure that we keep cash in the local economy. We don't want to do too much because you may end up also with inflation too. That's one of the things that we're also watching. But again, if government finances continue to track positively, then we'll do what we have to do. And if we see where it's starting to wane, then we may probably have to look at other measures to make sure we keep the economy going.
Okay, and finally, we did have an announcement from the previous administration about a $200 million, forgive me if I get the number wrong, line of credit. Does that agreement still stand? Yeah,
that was something that was approved by Parliament, so it is stand. It is in effect. It was something, but again, like I said, so far we hope we don't ever have to use it, but it is there as a kind of backup. So I think it was a responsible thing that Parliament did the last go around in terms of actually approving that. So at a minimum, the best time, as most people know, the best time to go look money is when you don't need money. Is whenever you're desperate for money is when they normally would break it off in you. So I think that was a responsible thing to do in terms of going and put it down just in case we need it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much, Rushmore. We're now going to call on April from Radio Cayman.
Break it off on me in this piece.
Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I believe that this question is for Mr. Saunders, but I'm not 100% certain. I'm trying to get a sense, or a way to quantify the impact, not just of the closure of the borders, but more around the tourism component of it. Do we have a sense of what that hit looks like? And the second part I'll answer after you.
Yeah, the short answer is yes. I mean, when we look at, for example, the tourism industry in terms of customs duty, when you look at the amount of imports and then you see not having 500,000 people going into restaurants, going into bars and so forth, you actually do see the direct hit on the customs revenue. So there's no ifs, ands, and buts about that in terms of what it is that the tourism brings to the country. We also look at Cayman Airways, for example. I mean, Cayman Airways is one of the things that this government has always seen as an economic accelerator, in the sense that, one, the service that they provide not only keeps fares down of people coming to Cayman, but it also basically expands within the economy. So what we're seeing right now is pretty much the full domestic economy going without tourism. And you can directly see with the results that we have, the strain that it has put. We're paying over $5 million a month just on a stipend alone to a lot of the affected employees in that area. And that is $60 million a year. But when you start factoring the multiplier effect of people going out, spending money, and keeping things going, you can see the big effect. Because a lot of stuff, I mean, those employees also spend money within the economy too. So when you take that out of the economy, you're not seeing the full potential. So while we are putting money back into the economy, the truth of the fact is this is money that the government is basically putting back in the economy that the government previously took out. And no government around the world has ever yet to prove that taking a dollar out of the economy and putting it back in has been more efficient than leaving it there in the first place. So what you're seeing right now is a balancing of priorities, and that's pretty much we're taking care of our own people. But definitely without the tourism industry, it is an issue, and that's one of the reasons why we really need to get our economy back. For many people who are not in the tourism industry, they're not feeling it. But for people who are within the tourism industry, I can tell you a lot of people are feeling it. I mean, especially now should have been high season for them. Their families, I mean, a lot of families are affected. Kids are away at college and so forth. So it does put a strain on all of us as a people and as a community. So we definitely need tourism back. There's no ifs, ands, and buts about that.
If you had to give me some sort of number, and I realize this is a difficult one to do, and say it's this big.
Well, if you look at the GDP and look at what it is that it brings to our local economy, we're talking about anywhere from $600 to $1 billion. I mean, so that is the kind of domestic activity that we have lost just from tourism not being here. And if you look at where tourism was trending to, I mean, we just passed the 500,000 mark, which was a major milestone. I mean, even our cruise tourism was also doing extremely well also. So that industry was trending in the right direction. And as a result, many businesses and also in government adjusted their infrastructure to deal with that growth. And of course, that growth, when you adjust the infrastructure like that, it takes on more costs. And now you have adjusted the infrastructure, but then the business then follow the tourist income. So it does impact our local economy.
Second bit of that, and this could be to whomever it makes sense, and I don't want to be the voice of doom, but should the borders stay closed longer than we're hoping, and we're all hoping a couple of months here tops, right? How long can we go the way we're going?
Well, realistically, when you look at our debt to GDP ratio and all our economic factors, I mean, we are still in a far better position than many countries. So from that standpoint, I'm not going to say at this point I'm losing sleep for this year and next year. But what I can say is that the main focus for us really is just getting the economy back to its full potential. So it's not a matter of preparing for what else. It's just that we're just focusing on getting people back to work, because it is important for people to realize, and for many of us who are within the public domain, when you do meet the workers and a little bit of the employees within the tourism industry, you see the genuine hurt from not being able to contribute as a productive citizen. And you can see where it impacts people's dignity. And for that is one cost you can never really quantify, where someone wakes up and not really feeling like they're living a life of purpose, especially when they like working with people. And that, I think, is probably one of the most difficult costs that we have not yet quantified, especially for people who love meeting people, love greeting people, love being at the airport, love seeing people. I mean, you see the emptiness. So a lot of people really, despite receiving the stipend, will tell you that they want the people back, they want tourism back, they want to feel as if though I am earning my own living and I'm not receiving something from government or elsewhere.
One more question. This one really has to do, and it might be a Dr. Lee question, it might not. As we get closer to the 70% vaccination rate, and we're talking about reopening the borders in some capacity, for the past few months, I'm going to tell you, the masks are sitting in a corner in my car. I barely am doing any of the things I was quite diligently doing in the beginning. I don't even know what social distance looks like right now if it weren't for stickers on the ground in front of me. So I've gotten really comfortable with the bubble that we're in. At the same time, understanding that we need people to come back into the country. With that vaccination rate, let's say it's at 70%, will that require those behaviors we've gotten so comfortable with to change?
Dr. Lee, I think.
Dr. Lee can...
Medical expertise.
He's been waiting for that one.
Are we going to have to start washing our hands more again, Dr. Lee? I think it's the real question. But
Cabinet Secretary had me texting.
We won't tell, sir.
I think I know what the question was.
Yeah, it's really, do we have to change our behaviors back closer to what they were before?
Yeah. Everybody wants to know what's definitely going to happen. No matter how much science you have, we don't know what's definitely going to happen. We would obviously be watching incredibly closely. It's very likely that we're going to have cases of coronavirus come up as the borders open. But if this does not translate to huge numbers of admissions and people presenting, We will just let it be. Of course, those who are in particular groups would need to take particular care. Those who are vulnerable and the elderly will need to take particular care. But it will be a question of seeing how things progress as to what the advice is at the time, rather than it being a sort of a more binary situation.
So it's going to be fluid, basically.
Yes. Essentially, yes.
Gotcha.
But we will need to take care. We will need to take great care, as we have done, especially with the vulnerable and the elderly, until we can see. And the hopeful news is, and I don't think people would be sharing this unless they really felt it was positive, that when we get more global vaccination, especially with things that are going to be developed towards the end of the year, we hope we will be seeing the end of our current pandemic. So that is what we are all hoping for.
And since you're trapped here, sir, I happen to have a young man who's preparing to go to college and for the first time realized that it was more complicated than it had been before because of vaccinations and schedules and timelines. How important is it for us to actually take care of some of these issues sooner rather than later?
I think you need to, like with all things in life, you have to decide which is the biggest thing you need to take care of. And currently the biggest threat probably is COVID, rather than some of the other threats. Like I think you're talking about in what order should you have essential vaccines before you go abroad. So you want to look at what's the biggest threat. If it's to go to somewhere where there's different sorts of diseases which are more prevalent, maybe you need to take care of that. But at the moment, for many travelers, it's COVID is the one that you want to be paying attention to.
Thank you, sir, very much. Thank you all.
April, if I could add one key point to your question to Dr. Lee about any potential reopening and in our behaviors is communication. Because whatever plan of action that is taken, communication with the public and understanding what our roles will be to do that safely is a commitment that this government will have with the public. And I know that Dr. T will support us with that. But we got to do this together. The government can't do it by themselves, and neither can Dr. Lee. So we'll definitely communicate that process, how we projectly think it's going to work, what you need to do, what the business need to do, what we all need to do to get through this together.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, April. Thank you, Dr. Lee. In an attempt to ask the last set of questions, we're going to call on Wendy from CMS, and then we're going to move to Sandra from CMR, as well as the Caymanian Times, Mr. Ralph Lewis.
Okay. That means I'm going to get time cut short. Hello, everybody. Question number one, which might help. Are we going to do this regularly? Are we going to looking at press briefings on a regular basis? Or have I got to ask all 37 questions now?
No, you don't have to ask all 37 questions now, Wendy. I think we can commit to having regular press briefings.
Okay, in that case, I'll go to the ones that are more priority, Mr. Premier. Thank you. This is simply because these are very much questions that are on the road. First and foremost, can we get an idea of whose chief officer is who in whose ministry? And also, who's got the dump?
Who is your question to?
I can't remember personally what all the chief officers are for each of the ministries, at least not in as quick a time as I'd like to respond to you with those. But we can certainly get the org chart and provide you with that so you can see it. I think it's basically final at this point.
Okay.
So we can provide you with that so you can see the entire layout.
Okay, great, thank you. The dump.
The GH falls under me.
The dump, the landfill.
Sorry, yes, of course.
Falls under
Would fall under the
Ministry of Health.
So you've got the Department of Environmental Health?
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, just a couple of quick questions for Mr. Bryan. Actually, it's only one because you answered the other one.
You're my friend.
The port situation. We exchanged briefly. I mentioned it to you that the CEO raised it. There are certainly issues still surrounding people at CPR, still are concerned. Have you had time to turn your attention to the situation with this referendum question that is sitting out there and has not been resolved. There is a referendum on the table. So have you had a chance to consider that? And what's your position on that and the situation regarding cruising, especially if we're talking about opening tourism again?
Well, there's two parts to that, and one involves a discussion with the rest of the members of the government and the Premier. First one about the legality of the referendum. After getting some advice and direction from the AG, unless it was a specific same plan that was on hand, that referendum wouldn't stand moving forward. But to give comfort to those who are concerned about those plans, we haven't fully discussed the whole thing, but we have no indication of any plans to do any cruise porting within this administration. And if that changes, I'm quite sure the Premier will give the necessary announcements in that respect.
There are no such plans.
There you go.
So we can all forget what the guy from Royal Caribbean said.
I have no idea.
Has he called you?
We haven't, as far as I'm aware, he has had no conversations with this government. And as I said, we don't have any plans to entertain that idea.
Okay. Referring to what's on everybody's sort of top of everybody's agenda other than COVID, is the situation surrounding development planning and all that sort of thing right now. There have been some particular concerns recently about mangroves and the threat. What are the plans at the moment regarding the current makeup of the CPA? Do you plan to change that as soon as possible? And what about Plan Cayman and how that was rolling out? Does this government will you be taking a new approach to that?
We haven't had the time yet to have a discussion around the membership on the boards. I have recently told my government colleagues that is what we need to look at. Obviously, I think there are other bits of legislation, including the Public Authorities Law, that has an impact on what changes we can make. I think in general, I mean, the sort of fundamentals of how I look at it is I want to see who has been participating, who has been engaged, who has been performing, and we can put them to one side and then look at the others that perhaps have not been showing up, haven't been participating. Those are the ones that are sort of in the first line of potential for being replaced. But we haven't gotten to that point yet. And that is something that will be probably in the next week or two. We work through those.
Just to add on to that, obviously that means you haven't looked at Plan Cayman yet. Did you say that?
No, we haven't.
No, haven't looked at that. What about the mangrove situation?
I have asked each minister to go through their areas of responsibility, the various SAGCs and other committees underneath that fall within their portfolio responsibilities, and come prepared with information in order to discuss that at a particular meeting that we'll have in probably another week or two.
Okay. Have you had chance to sort of address the issues that were raised about the mangroves? Because there's quite a lot of projects that are coming up that are very specifically threaten specific flood areas, floodplains, the South Sound Mangrove Basin, and then obviously the one that was last week in the central wetlands. I know the Rangers wrote to you, and a few other people I think have written to you about it. So is there anything that you can do in short order that can help us erect some protections immediately for mangroves? I think a lot of people felt very, very strongly once you were elected that might happen quickly.
Well, as I understand it, right now there is a mangrove protection plan in place, or a management plan, and that means that the National Conservation Council needs to be consulted before any kind of activity involving the removal of mangrove takes place. I understand that the recent matters that were under consideration, I believe, have all been sort of deferred for the time being. So the process is following its course, and I think the the various bodies that have an input on the basis of the legislative remit. I think they're doing so. They're following that course. I haven't heard of any particular decisions being made which reflect anything that's problematic at this point.
Okay, moving on to in the wake of the election, quite a few of you have said publicly that there was pressure, that there was things said. Maybe even we understand money offered, and I know Mr. Saunders in particular raised it in the Legislative Assembly. There are two questions coming out of this, which is one, are you willing to go into more detail and tell the public who made these phone calls, what these phone calls were about, the kind of money that was offered, and be a bit more transparent this time around, because we didn't. And secondly, if there is any agreement between you all in PACT, whether you're willing to publish that after the last government refused to show us what their deals were. I'm just putting it out there, just what people want to know.
I can speak just for myself. I didn't get any phone calls or any offers on anything, so it's very easy for me to say that. But I have been told that a lot of pressure was brought to bear. But I think really for us at this point, the election is over. The government is in place. It is now our responsibility and our duty to move the country forward and address a lot of the issues that people expect to have addressed by us. So I would rather not personally get into a retrospective analysis of what has occurred in the past. I can say that we don't have a document drawn up between us. We all committed to each other that we would trust each other and we would work to the best interests of the people of this country. And we would, in every decision we make, we would try to put the people of this country foremost and ask: is this the best decision for the people of the country? Is this going to be the best decision 5 years down the road as well? And that is the approach that we have taken. We have not drafted any agreement. We're certainly not going to promise you're going to get something that doesn't exist.
Thank you. Mr. Saunders, did you want to add to that?
Well, we the caucus meet regularly, and one of the things that we have upcoming is pretty much an alignment of the manifestos in terms of the top priorities. So there are some things that I had campaigned on that were near and dear to me as my other colleagues. But what I can say, just looking at the group that came together, is that one, many of the manifestos were already aligned with regards to putting people first and doing what's best for the country. And I just want to echo what the Premier said, in the sense that the election is done and over. There's no future in the past. And I am pleased that my colleagues were able, yes, we were maybe a young government, many first-time ministers, only 2 members of cabinet have been there before. But for them to have showed their true character and being able to stand firm, I feel much better and I sleep much better knowing the quality of people that I'm sitting with in cabinet, in the sense of being able to do the right thing, regardless of what pressures may have came to bear.
Okay, just a couple of very short, quick ones. When can we expect the code of conduct?
There is 2 codes of conduct you might be referring to. One is a cabinet code of conduct. The other one is a code of conduct for parliamentary members. Both are being actioned at this point. The cabinet code of conduct is, ironically, that's something that I had sort of worked on and had in fairly final form 5 years ago.
Right.
It had never been taken up, but I think it probably needs some tweaking now. But I think we can move ahead. And I have given the governor an indication that that's a priority for us to move forward with and have that adopted by the cabinet. I have also yesterday had a conversation with the speaker indicating to him that it is a priority for us to get move forward with the code of conduct in relation to Parliament. So that both things we're moving forward with at the same time, and we hope to have both in place at roughly about the, well, I can't. It's difficult to say. I think it's easier for us to get the cabinet one in place quickly. We'll probably have to do a select committee in Parliament and develop the parliamentary code of conduct. But both are a priority.
I've got quite a few more, but I'm just going to do one because I can feel Donna on me. So I'm just going to have one more, which is, now that you've been in the office for, well, you've probably been rifling through the filing cabinets now for a couple of weeks. Have you found any specific skeletons that have caused you concern, or any commitments or promises made by the last government that you may now find yourselves having to address?
Not yet.
None at all? No promises to developers about changing the height of buildings that are already underway? By any chance? No?
Donna, I'm really sorry, but I do have to go because there's a 4:45 meeting that I have to go to. So if nobody has any further questions for me, I would like to depart at this point.
Okay, Sandra from CMR and Ralph Mellenheim, do you have any questions for His Excellency? No? Okay.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay.
No worries. Thank you, Your Excellency. Ralph, would you like to come in quickly, make your comments or ask your questions?
Thank you, Donna. Good afternoon, gentlemen and ladies. First of all, I want to say congratulations on your victory, and I look forward to these press briefings. Wendy alluded to a question of mine. Can you say what the next press briefing would be?
I mean, my personal view is that we should probably be doing them at least once a month, but it may be that we will do them more frequently. I'm hoping that, you know, if we have a lot of success with this initiative that we've embarked on to try to encourage people to come out and get vaccinated, you know, on the basis that, you know, Owen Roberts can do 2,000 vaccinations a day, in a few weeks we may be back here saying to you, hey, we've got some really good news to tell you. So it's going to depend, but I would say at least once a month, and it may well be more frequently, depending on when the circumstances dictate that we should have something to say.
One of the reasons for that is I'm trying to keep my questions brief today in the interest of time.
Yes,
so I look forward to the next one. I'll keep some of the questions over. Okay. Just two things. The first one is I've heard a lot of talk about people in the first press briefing as I sat there, and can you emphasize, you know, why is the push, and is it PAC's intention to really focus on the people and about their lifestyle and their livelihood, their wellness, and about just general development of the population of the Cayman Islands? Is that what PAC is all about?
I think we share a collective view. If you look at all of our manifesto approaches, our campaign approaches, mine was based on, you know, building community and that feeding through into building country. Community creates country, specifically it was. You know, other members of the group have similar focuses on basically building and enhancing the lives of our people and building communities and making the quality of their lives as good as it can be. So yes, that is I think an approach that we should be taking. I think obviously we want to implement a slightly changed approach where we have an approach to sustainability and an emphasis around sustainability. And for example, the UN sustainability goals incorporated into everything that we do, so that the lives of our people become and the quality of their lives become an important part of everything we do, and that everything that happens, whatever happens in the economy, has a specific benefit for our people, and not just, you know, some sort of vague trickle-down effect. We want to see tangible, specific benefits to our people in education and in wellness and in health and in employment. So the full spectrum.
Yeah, sorry, Ralph, just before you move off on that, one of the things that we did, I did, and I'm sure other colleagues would have supported, was to say to the ESO is that we want to change some of the metrics that we look at. I mean, right now, a lot of the metrics that we focus on is what the economy is doing. And what we found is that many times the economy is doing well and the people isn't doing well. And what we want to know is to start looking at like Human Development Index, those kind of measurements where you look at just life expectancy, you look at just employment, but you also look at purchasing power parity in terms like things what it costs here versus what it costs someplace else. So it's about enhancing the quality of life. And I think as a people in a country, what we choose to measure shows what it is that is important to us. And I think that is one of the things that we want to focus on. So, I mean, a perfect example is even retirement versus life expectancy. We have people being pushed out of the workforce at 65. Ageism is real. Why? Because of the high healthcare costs. But women in particular who are living to 85, I mean, what they do for the next 20 years. You know what I mean? So again, even in terms of even the gender balance, I mean, you saw it in the results of the election. This is the first time in our history we have so much women being elected. And I think that itself says something. But what we also want is balance within our society, because you can't have more than 50% of the workplace are being underpaid where women are concerned. So these are the kind of issues that we really want to address, we need to address if we're really serious about, to borrow the line from the premier, community creates country. And I think this is where we need to, and COVID has given us a chance to rebalance our priorities. Positions that we never looked at before as being essential are now being looked at differently. So again, these are the kind of things that we want to focus on. So it makes no use that the government finances is doing well, the economy is doing well, and then all of a sudden a lot of people are still struggling. Because we do have serious challenges here that needs to be addressed.
And I'd like to the final question. For those who ask that many of the government ministers are fairly new to this job in a time when we have some serious issues, what would your response be?
Well, my response is simple. I mean, the people knew that when they went to the vote. And it's clear that they did not want to continue. I mean, you can go back to men, and this has been one of the biggest problems that we have with men for young people. They can't get a job because people claim that, well, they have no experience. Well, how do you get experience? I mean, you look at even the U.S. presidency. Nobody ever has experience being president until you're elected president. But what I can say is that what I look for in my colleagues, and the reason why I'm humbled and honored to serve with them, is I want people who are caring. I want people who are committed. I want people who are competent. And so far, what I can say, it's there. But what is one of the main things that is needed is people who genuinely care about other people. And you don't need any qualification or experience to care about people. You just need to have a big heart and be focused on doing the right thing at the right time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Donna.
Thank you very much. Ralph, I'd like to finally call on Sandra from CMR.
Thank you. I must say that, Donna, I actually had no questions initially until you told people I was here. And then the questions started flooding in. And of course, now everyone is saying we should limit these questions to 3 per press. But anyway, I'm going to make it very, very brief. Kenneth, this question's for you. Some questions have arisen about individuals who've been getting this stipend, whether or not they've been properly vetted. Some may have since obtained employment since applying for the stipend. So people are wondering, will there be any review of those individuals who are currently getting the monthly stipend?
I don't think there's anything wrong with examining that, but one must bear in mind that Cayman Islands is a high cost of living jurisdiction, and $1,500 may not, even though it's a lot for some. You have a family with kids, or both family members have lost their jobs. $1,500 don't go as far as you think. So even if somebody was to be having a second job, I don't think it would, at this particular point, unless it's severe and the government wants to consider withdrawing it, I don't think it would be a good idea, particularly because we are intending to try to get the borders open safely in the short term. Like the Deputy Premier has said, it's money back in the economy that's spent in our economy. So we'll definitely take a look at it. I don't think that there'll be much changes in respect to what's it's been working. So.
Okay, and I'm just going to reserve all the other questions. I'll just send them by email. Okay. That works perfect. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Sandra, you do have some final comments?
Yes.
Minister Bryan?
Thank you, Donna. Just before the Premier closes up, I just want to say the good news is that the public has already started to be reactive to our little fun and prize giveaway. And for those who've already emailed in to offer up some prizes, thank you so much. But for the rest of you who are listening, and you may own a business, we'd love you to support this giveaway opportunity for those who get vaccinated as of 8th of this month until the end of the vaccination period. We want to give away as many prizes as possible to encourage persons to get vaccinated. So again, the email address, if you would like to participate by donating a gift or a prize or something that will encourage persons to take part, the email address is mottvax@caymanislands.ky. Again, mottvax@caymanislands.ky. Thank you very much, Donna.
Thank you very much, Minister Bryan. Any final words, Premier Panton?
Thank you very much, Donna. I just wanted to say thanks to my colleagues who, and obviously the governor has had to depart to a scheduled meeting that he couldn't avoid, but I want to thank him as well for his participation. I want to thank Dr. Lee for being here. And I think my colleagues have certainly acquitted themselves well this afternoon, and I'm very proud of them. And I want to thank all the members of the press who are here. So thank you all very much. Thank you all who have been listening, been watching, and we look forward to interacting with you at regular intervals in the future. Thank you very much as well, Donna.
Thank you very much, Premier Panton, and thank you to the public, the media, of course, our sign language interpreter, and of course to our panelists for joining us here for this press briefing today. I'm Donna Bush. I'd like to encourage all of you, if you'd like to get the latest on the COVID-19 numbers and information, to go online to gov.ky. Again, thank you for joining us, and I wish all of you a wonderful afternoon.